Good evening. Welcome everyone to our July board meeting. I am Leah Cruzy, board chair. Joining me this evening are Jim Sandman, Ricardo Ganjam, Rick Cruz, Chantel Wright, Shakura Adamo Fanian, and Nick Rodriguez. I would like to start by recognizing our 3 new board members who have joined the DC Public Charter School Board. I am thrilled they have joined this board. Individually and collectively, they are an impressive group with deep experience in education and nonprofit management. I will first introduce each and invite them to say a few words. First is Shakura. Shakura is a native Washingtonian and a Ward 8 resident. She is Executive Director of Reading Partners DC, a nonprofit that places community volunteers in elementary schools to help students master essential reading skills. Shakura previously worked as Executive Director of Democracy Prep Congress Heights Public Charter School and at Imagine Southeast Public Charter School. I'll invite Shakura to say a few words.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much. I'm so excited to get started and to continue my work. As Leah mentioned, I am a native Washingtonian. I've been invested in our education system since I was going to school in the system. So I'm excited that my experience has landed me here to impact even more children, including my 2-year-old daughter, eventually at some point when she goes to school. So thank you, everybody. So excited to be here.
Thank you, Shakura. Next, Chantel Wright. Chantel is a Ward 8 resident with vast experience in education. She is the Chief Program Officer for Ed Navigator, a national nonprofit that empowers families by providing access to high-quality educational support. She also founded and served as CEO of Achievement Prep, a public charter school network in Ward 8. I'll next invite Chantel to say a few words.
Thank you, Leah. Good evening, everyone. I, like Shakura, I'm excited and honored to be serving in this capacity to continue my work here in the district, working with our schools and working on behalf of students and families of DC. So thank you for the welcome. Excited for the work.
Thank you, Chantel. And finally, Nick Rodriguez. Nick is a Ward 6 resident with more than 20 years of experience working with leaders in education. He is the CEO of Delivery Associates, a consultancy that works with governments, nonprofits, and philanthropies to improve the effectiveness of government services and programs. Nick.
Thank you so much. I guess the other big thing is that I'm a longtime DC resident and a parent of 2 kids in the charter school system and formerly in DC public schools as well. It's a real honor to be able to serve in this role and to serve alongside such amazing new and old colleagues. It's been great getting to know you all and a wonderful staff at the PCSB itself. And so I just hope to serve in a manner that's worthy of all of you and worthy of the residents and learners and families that we are here to look out for. So yeah, looking forward to getting started.
Thank you, Nick. And while we have 3 new board members and a full board this evening, this is also Rick Cruz's last board meeting as a member of this body. Rick, where to begin? It's difficult for me to accept that this is your last meeting with us. For more than 4 years, you have been an anchor for this body, for this city, maintaining a firm and focused grasp on quality and access for the children and families of the District of Columbia. With grace, patience when appropriate, and impatience also when appropriate, and wit, you have navigated this body through a major and very successful leadership transition into and through critical strategic planning, and as we mature into our next chapter together with new board members, joining us here for the first time this evening. You set a standard for me and for others on how to show up and how to follow through. When it's important to drill down on the data, or to pick up the phone, go see for myself, then ask more questions, so that the decisions that I make as a member of this board are well-informed and appropriately contextualized. Thank you. We were faced with some high-stakes decisions during our tenure together, including during my first board meeting. You took the time to put me through a bit of a boot camp in advance of that, generously listening, offering input, and challenging assumptions. That your willingness to always make time for me and with other board members to talk and think through matters before us, when I know you have so much else on your plate personally and professionally, models for me on how to serve alongside others. Thank you. Thank you for your service to our city and its children, for your leadership of this body, and for your mentorship of me. Would other board members like to say a few words?
Sure. Thank you, Leah. I 100% echo everything that you said about Rick. And Rick, thank you so much for your authentic leadership that you bring to this board, and really for your focus on high performing outcomes for our students and families of Washington, D.C. I know I have learned so much from you along the way. And I thank you for the impact and the inspiration that you've given me. Always wanting to learn more, to be curious, and to really understand how we can really impact the students of this city. We're going to really miss you on this board. Going to miss your genuine passion for this area. And I know we'll continue to be connected because you're not going away. You're going to have impacts in other very important ways. It's really been an honor to serve with you, and thank you so much.
Rick, you have brought to the board an extraordinary combination of professionalism, expertise, wisdom, good judgment, common sense, integrity, pragmatism, diligence, and commitment to the mission. When we first met, after I'd been nominated to the board, but before I'd been confirmed, you told me something I've never forgotten. You told me that your work on this board is the most important thing you do. Now, lest your employer hear this, I didn't for a minute think that you were dissing your day job. I understood what you meant. I think you were reflecting your understanding of the foundational societal importance of public education and of the consequences of the decisions we make here, not only for the children of the District of Columbia, but for the entire city. You've always led the board and served on the board in a way that reflects that understanding of the importance of what we do. I appreciate especially your respectful treatment and solicitousness of your fellow board members, of the board staff, of school leaders, of teachers, of everyone with whom you've interacted on behalf of the board. You are one class act. And I think you're just a model public service. You've made me proud to serve on a board led by you. Thank you, Rick.
Sure.
Okay. Rick, again, I'm just thrilled. I'm sad that I don't get to work with you in this capacity, but I am grateful to you and the model of leadership that you've given the charter board. I think your legacy will be felt well after you have gone on to do whatever it is that you go on to do with your volunteer time. So thank you for everything, and I wish you well and good luck.
Okay, Nick, go ahead.
Sorry, I raised my digital hand and my real hand. I was Rick. I'm also sorry that I won't get to work with you. Thank you already for making yourself available to me for advice. And my understanding is that I'm still going to call you, even though you're not on this board, to get some more advice. So a huge thanks in advance for that. So really, really appreciate it. And thank you for setting the pace and the standard that the rest of us, those of us who are new, especially, are going to try to follow.
So Rick, kudos to you for your service. We've had lots of conversations back and forth during your time as chair. And like the other new board members, saddened that we won't have the opportunity to work together, but appreciate your leadership, who you've been, how you've always shown up in terms of leading this board. And as Shakura said, I look forward to seeing what you do next in your volunteer time.
Thank you. If I can just take a second and just thank everyone. Jim, you noted something that I was going to close with, so I guess I'll start there, which is perhaps much to the chagrin of employers, I still do feel that this is some of the most important work that I've done. And as fellow board members, you are the only ones, perhaps other than my wife, who understands or will soon understand what giving 8 years as a PCSB board member and 4 years as a chair during a pandemic means. And I don't for a second regret any one of those minutes, those school visits, those conversations, even tough ones that I've had with some of my new colleagues on this board, like Chantal. But they were always from a place of trying to make this city better for kids. So I thank you guys all for all that you've done and for all that you'll do in this board role. We took a lot of important steps, and yet I feel like there is so much more that we can, should, and need to do, probably even more so coming out of the last few years. Probably the most consequential of those, and I'll speak for myself here, is in hiring Dr. Michelle Walker-Davis, which I continue to be proud of, impressed by, excited by every day, knowing that the role only becomes harder and more challenging and more impactful and more important for those very reasons. One of the things that I've really valued about this board, and I think that most of us ascribe to in this role, is that while we don't always agree, we didn't always agree, and sometimes we disagreed deeply, but we did so with a deep respect for each other. We did so arguing not the facts, but the implications of those facts, and ultimately aligned in what this work means for families, for students, for schools, for teachers, for school leaders. So Chantal, Shakura, Nick, I'm so excited, first of all, to have our board be full once again, but in particular that the three of you are on the board. And I hope that you can continue and strengthen that tradition of harmonious discussion and dissent, and even when it's not harmonious, deeply respectful of our differences. So I just encourage everyone to continue to be open to critique and constructive feedback. We owe it to students and families. I encourage you to not obsess over those who want to fight everything that our schools and families fight for every day. Anyone who's got a hard time believing in the self-determination of parents, in particular parents and families of color who have historically been redlined, you may not get the hearing you intend with this board, because that's why we're here. And I'll say that's why I've always been here. This is and will always be a fight for families and kids. And I know this board appreciates that. There are far too many folks who are comfortable with the status quo. And sometimes it feels like the challenge, or the biggest challenge, comes from those who pretend to have the same agenda and values as us. I encourage us all to ask the hard questions and yet stand firm in the role that we play in supporting those who really need access to great public education. And I'm confident, perhaps more confident than ever, that this board and the PCSB will play its role in that. So thank you.
Thank you. Before I turn it over to Michelle, I would like to remind everyone that we traditionally do not have a board meeting in August, so this is the last board meeting of the 21-22 school year. Dr. Walker-Davis.
Thank you, Chair Cruzy. I do have just a few brief remarks today, but I wanted to start by also thanking Rick Cruz for your leadership. Rick, as been stated, you chaired this board through challenging times, least of all, not the least of all is the pandemic and also reopening schools. but I really want to acknowledge and appreciate your support for me in the process of becoming the ED, but also helping to make my transition as smooth as can be during the middle of a pandemic, and really echoing the sentiments of everyone here about how thoughtful you've been about your service to the board and setting me up for success and our team up for success. So I really just want to say thank you. I also have felt that your responsibilities on the board have not waned, even though you're not chair, that you make it a point to be present and have your votes counted, especially when it matters, which is every decision that we make here. So thank you so much for that. I really also want to welcome our new board members. I am super excited to have a full complement of board members. I want to welcome Shakura, Adam Ofanian, Chantel Wright, and Nick Rodriguez. I'm so glad that you are bringing your expertise to this work. I have already seen you rolling up your sleeves, getting onboarded, spending quality time, getting to know the materials that are before you, and I know you are prepared for the decisions that are in front of you yet tonight. I also want to mention that while we have 3 new board members, the mayor also reappointed our chair, Leah Cruzy, to another term on this board. So I want to acknowledge and thank Leah for her continued commitment and service. And then I'll share just a few remarks going into this summer here. First, to point out that while school may be in recess, summer learning is still taking place. And we at DC PCSB have been very busy learning too. We've been talking to parents, caretakers, and DC residents to hear about their public education experience and how they choose the right schools for their students. In the past few months, we talked to a large number of families, charter school teachers and staff, DC residents, and prospective parents, and want to acknowledge the staff and team and all of the outreach that they did to conduct 16 virtual focus groups, a 1,700 person survey, and one-to-one interviews in both English and non-English speaking languages for our DC residents. While the data from the survey is still being compiled, we learned a lot from these focus groups. Participants said that they want schools to do important things for students, like developing a love of learning, the ability to compete, and prepare their children and youth for future endeavors. And we learned that when picking a school, families focus on location, school culture, diversity, safety, and academic programming. We'll talk about these findings in more detail at our September meeting, and they will also inform the revisions to the charter application guidelines, which we will also discuss in September. You will see those application guidelines come out in August, and we will have a robust conversation about them at our September meeting. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Chair Cruzy, and thank you all for my first meeting with 7 board members, and I'm very excited about that.
Thank you, Dr. Walker-Davis. Okay, as we move through each agenda item this evening, Ms. Aisha Berkeley, our moderator for the evening, will unmute DC PCSB staff or individuals speaking on behalf of a school. The hand-raising feature has been disabled. Individuals who have previously signed up to testify will be called upon. And as a reminder, all written public comment is available to the public on our website. If you didn't sign up by sending your name to the public comment mailbox before this meeting, please submit your comments to public.comment@dcpcsb.org or call our public comment line to leave a voicemail testimony at 202-328-2660 and select option 2. It doesn't look like we have witnesses signed up to speak this evening, so I will proceed to our public hearing and invite Ms. Hannah Cousineau from the School Performance Department to come up and join us. Good evening, Hannah.
Hello. I will wait to begin until the school representatives from DC Bilingual join us as panelists. Okay, I see everybody is here. Hello, my name is Hannah Cousineau, and I am a senior manager in the school performance department. Tonight, the board will hear from DC Bilingual Public Charter School regarding its request to accelerate its approved enrollment ceiling schedule while maintaining its maximum enrollment ceiling. Per its most recent charter amendment from June 22nd, 2020, DC Bilingual Public Charter School is approved to serve 712 students at capacity. The school's proposed enrollment schedule would adjust its rate of growth between school year 2023 and 24 and school year 2028-29. Representatives from the school are available to answer the board's questions.
Welcome, DC Bilingual team. Would you like to offer a few remarks?
Yes, I would love to speak. First of all, thank you so much for having us here at this meeting. I'm really excited to see all of you and to say thank you also to Rick Cruz, who's been so great on the board and has been so supportive of our school success. So I feel kind of honored to be able to be at this meeting where, you know, that's your official last meeting. So I'm excited for that and to publicly thank you for all of the support you've provided our school. I just want to say that our school has felt incredibly supported by Public Charter School Board throughout its growth process. We embarked on a growth process because of the support that we've received from the Public Charter School Board and people who have seen the data that our school has been able to produce and the way that our children have been able to succeed despite coming in not speaking two languages and being able to catch up and meet the academic gains that we have set for them and alongside their families. So we've projected this growth plan to have up to 712 students by school year 2028. And one of the things we've noticed is that because of the year-by-year changes that happen with enrollment and where certain children are exiting out of our school to enter middle school early, we sometimes see that there are available spots in 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade that we could include into our school enrollment. So when we first asked for the specific ceiling increase, we were very conservative. And now we realize that having a little bit more flexibility with the number of students we can have during the growth years, we're not asking for permission to increase the enrollment at full growth, but we are asking for more flexibility at the growth years. And so that is to be able to fill in spots when we have them in 5th grade or 4th grade or 3rd grade and so on, as we see that movement is happening for our families. I also want to introduce our COO. He has been with us this past school year. He's new to DC Bilingual, and he supports me with all of the school's compliance and operations. And he's also overseeing our school finances and our enrollment projections. So he can speak a little bit more about our demand data and our at-risk student preference, which we've adopted this year. And we fortunately have been able to make sure that the students that are getting the spots in the coming year, which is our year 1 of school growth, go to students who are coming through the equitable access preference.
Hey there. Good evening. Christian Yarberry, COO, as Daniela mentioned. I'm excited to enter my 2nd year with DC Bilingual and can briefly present to you all information on our enrollment for the upcoming school year, and definitely here to answer any questions you all may have. So for the enrollment, we had over 1,600 applications for this school year, ranging from PK3 through 5th grade. Our current wait list sits at around 971 students, with a total of 52 students with equal access preference. That's in pre-K3, pre-K4, kinder, 1st, 2nd, and 5th grade. So we're very excited about those numbers. We've done a really good job about making sure that we are providing support to all families in completing our enrollment packet, and are excited to only have 6 offers currently out that we are trying to fill. so that we will be fully enrolled by the time school starts on August 29th. Thank you all. Look forward to supporting with any questions you may have.
Thank you both for the presentation. Do any other board members have questions to kick things off?
Hi, Daniela and Christian. Good to see you, Daniela. Welcome, Christian. I just have a couple clarification questions for you. So I want to make sure I understand. You're not asking to actually increase the ultimate enrollment. You're just trying to do it, advance it more across the years. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So one of the things that I saw from staff was your issue with your certificate of occupancy. Can you talk to us about what you're doing to get the certificate of occupancy to reflect your desired enrollment?
Yes, definitely. There was a lot of miscommunication and confusion regarding my transition into this role and the transition of our director of ops out of the role when I started. And so we've been in communication with PCSB regarding the CFO, and we'll be able to obtain our new CFO by August 5th. We're waiting until we finish construction of our new 27,000 square foot addition, which will allow us to serve more students as we continue through the growth period. And that CFO will give us enough seats, enough space to fill all of our seats of 712 students, plus the staff that we will utilize to serve these students.
And your current CFO gives you up to what capacity right now?
For students, it's 500, and I think it's 501 or 502 students.
But total?
So that's where some of the confusion is, how it's read on the document. Total, I believe it was 535 maybe. And so some of it was confusion of if the document actually says just for student load, or does that include our students and our staff? So that's kind of where our confusion led. And so we did reach out and attempt to get a new CFO, but we're advised to wait until we finish the construction project due to the onerous work that it takes to get a new one provided to us or shared with us at the time.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Hi, I wanted to probe just a little bit in your board's involvement in this request. What kind of deliberations have been going on with your board, and are they fully on board and supportive of this request?
Yes, thank you so much for the question. So our board has been really engaged in part of our planning process for school growth. They have been with us every step of the way, with talking to the community and talking to the ANC and talking with, at monthly board meetings about all of the updates that we've needed to keep the whole community up to date on regarding how we're doing this, right? How we're doing equitable access, how many seats we're adding next school year versus future school years. So they are a part of it. They have been setting clear parameters for us to stick to as we look to grow the school. And I feel really supported by them. Our board chair did submit a letter in support of this particular application that we're presenting to you today. And we did discuss it at our last public board meeting. We discussed having submitted this application, and we discussed the exact difference between this application and the one we submitted 2 years ago, and why we needed a little bit more wiggle room year by year. And again, that has mostly to do with how the patterns have changed with where kids go during, I think COVID may have affected it, but some families exiting at times that we didn't expect, or more families looking to enter at years, 3rd, 4th, or 5th grade. So we just want to have a little bit more wiggle room in the case we can add more kids at different grades than we expected to add when we first submitted the application.
Great, thank you.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Ricardo. So building on that question, and good evening, Daniela and Christian, excited to talk to you all today. Why do you sort of feel like now, why do you feel prepared now to serve more students each year than originally planned, beginning in school year 23-24? Why now?
Maybe I can start answering, Christian, if you would like to add on with your hat of how to keep our schools safe and well operating day to day. I think we've always been fearful of growth, to be honest with you. We've always been very fearful. We have a small school. I guess it's getting bigger. I'm not sure how much longer I can say it's a small school. When we decided to embark on this growth plan, we were not sure we knew how to do it. We received funding from Ed Forward, and we received support from Bellwether to help us draft the strategic plan to ensure that at the core of how we make decisions was our school's core elements and vision and mission, and that the academic program wouldn't be damaged in any way as we look to increase enrollment. So that was like, we were like, if we have to change the way we teach, we can't grow, because we are growing to be able to give more kids the opportunity to learn in this particular environment that works for the kids we currently serve. So with that, we were very conservative about how many kids per year we would add, how much we could handle in terms of new teachers, getting everybody to be ready to teach and to be really, really able to provide the high quality educational program that we look to provide. Well, it turns out that our staff tend to be really, I guess, happy. I hate to say that because I'm totally putting words in their mouths, but we had one teacher leave in this past school year out of a full 150 staff members, and our retention is really strong. And there's a lot of people who are mentioning wanting to be there long term. So what that does for us is that it helps us feel that we have some sustainable academic program available for our kids long term, and we have some strong pipelines available for people wanting to stay in the school long term and try teaching if they're in a non-teaching role, or they're in a teaching role, they want to try a different teaching role. Like, we have a lot of people and staff and a lot of energy in terms of people wanting to be really committed to the work that we do. Also, with the equitable access preference, that was one of the reasons that most of our staff have stayed at our school for so many years. It's because they believe that that preference was going to eventually bring our school community to be serving the kids who need the highest quality education. And their passion and mission is so aligned with that's why they signed up to work at our school. And without equitable access, our demographics were changing significantly. So keeping in mind our staff retention, keeping in mind the motivation and energy that we've seen with our community, from our staff to our families, and the support of our board, we were more ready this year to open up additional spots than we thought we would be ready to when we were first planning this, back when we first created the enrollment matrix in 2018, 2019. So to answer your question, we know information now about this school and the school sustainability that we didn't know back then. Another area was the building. We needed to build additional building space to be able to educate our kids. And when we first created this matrix, we didn't even have a building yet. It was like we will someday have this building, and we hope we will fill it with these spots. And this is the projection of growth that we envision. But what happened was amazing. We were able to expand on our same campus. We were able to expand 27,000 square feet. And the construction project was the only sure thing that went as planned during COVID, which is crazy, right? Like, construction projects are supposed to be the riskiest project schools take on. For us, it was the least risky. It went as planned, everything went as scheduled, and it's completely finished now. And so it's like, whoa. So we're actually going to have empty classrooms between now and many years from now until we have the full growth plan. So I hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you.
Hi, Daniela. Hi, Christian. I'm Jim. Daniela, I have a follow-up to Ricardo's question. I heard you talk about the discussions within the board about this request. Did the board actually take a vote to approve this request?
They didn't take a vote to approve this request that we're making now, but they discussed it and they approved I don't think it was a formal vote, but I didn't think we needed a formal vote. Hannah, can you clarify that for me?
my interpretation is that I'm actually going to leave this to our legal counsel, just so that I don't misspeak on the public record.
Sarah, could you address this?
I believe you need a formal vote, but I'll let our general counsel be the final word. Yeah.
It's a charter amendment. It's a charter amendment, correct?
Board member Sandman, I just need a minute. Oh, there she is. Thank you.
Oh, yes, you do need a formal vote. Sorry, I communicated this to Hannah, but it looks like she didn't get that message.
My apologies. I was not aware that we needed a formal vote. And I'm wondering, is it possible to have the board vote at their next board meeting, which is in 2 weeks, and inform you of that vote when it happens? Or would it have to be more recent, like sooner than that?
I'd suggest, subject to Sarah's and Leah's views, that if the board is inclined, we could approve this subject to your board's approving it at its next meeting, contingent on your board's approving it at its next meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, I would say, Jim, actually, that following that timeline, this is just the public hearing tonight, and we won't come back until September. So that should give them plenty of time to have a formal vote on this before it comes before you again.
And our next meeting is not until September.
Yeah. So it's
we can
you've got
provide
plenty
that.
of time. It's not a problem.
Okay, thank you.
So Danielle and Christian, hello, and thank you for the responses so far. I was going to build off some of the previous questions around stakeholder engagement and ask about your community engagement efforts and what kind of input the school community, current and prospective, has offered on plans to accelerate growth.
That is a really great question. And I have to be completely honest with you that prior to COVID, we had been doing a ton of communication about the growth plan. We had attended a numerous amount of ANC meetings. We had virtual town halls about growth. I have a newsletter that I put out every week, and we would mention the growth plan and include PowerPoints that we were also sharing at the ANC meetings. So I have a whole list of the number of times we held meetings and forums and opportunities for folks to be engaged in the work and ask questions and provide us with their concerns and questions. We even had a comment box before COVID where people would just submit questions, and then we had an FAQ that we updated weekly to answer every single question. So I feel like I think we did a really good job with communication before COVID. What happened during COVID is that anytime I would post about the construction site or I would post updates about the growth, I received a lot of community backlash about our focus on the growth and our focus on construction. And the community requested that I speak less about growth planning and the project and more about how to get kids back into the building safely and more about how to ensure that the academic program was really in tune with the needs of the community at the time. So I think I have a really good grasp on our community and what they need. And I receive a lot of feedback. I'm really connected with, our families and our staff and our board, obviously. And so I had to tone it down. So toning it down for me meant fewer mentions on my weekly newsletter, keeping a page up to date. We have a page on our website that's up to date. So people who are really interested can go to the page and can find information. However, the focus was not that. The focus was COVID and safety of our children. And I heard that loud and clear from our community as what they cared more about. And it was off-putting to them that I would be focusing on a growth plan.
But at this point, does the school community know of your intentions to have some flexibility with the growth plan?
Yes, absolutely. At this point that there's a beautiful new addition to the building, there is a ton of light at the end of the tunnel feel of like everyone's coming back and there's this new building. And so they've signed up for tours of the building. A lot of people who hadn't engaged in the growth plan or the addition plan are now reaching out to get tours, are excited to see what it looks like. And I am getting a lot of emails asking me to send them photos and talk about it. They have also been engaged in the equitable access preference and wanting to know how many spots have gone to siblings versus children of staff versus students coming in through equitable access. Our community cares a lot about that. I think a lot of families who have a child already in the school and would like to get a second child in the school care a lot about whether or not they'll have a chance to add their second child into the school, whether there'll be a spot for them. And so a lot of folks are engaging, mainly the folks that care, right? That care a lot about these topics are engaging with how many kids we're having any given year and whether or not their family would benefit from the plan that DC Bilingual is embarking on.
Thank you. I think Nick, you had a question?
Yes, Daniela, Christian, great to meet you. Thanks for your interest in your application. I'm going to ask you like the softest of softball questions, which is, what's the secret of some of your success? And what I mean by that is I see just very, very impressive kind of numbers in the application across all the criteria, the enrollment, the demand, et cetera. I just, would love to hear your brief reflections as a school leader on kind of what it is that generates that sort of demand by students and retention for staff. I think would love to hear your reflections on that.
Christian, again, I'd love, I can start, but I'd love your perspective too, as one of our newest members of our school. I think that the length of time that many of our staff have been at the school has been incredibly important. I'm entering I just finished my 13th year at DC Bilingual. And so I think that's important, right? Like I started at DC Bilingual before we knew anything about what we were doing. Like we weren't sure how do we teach bilingual education to all kids? What are the best methods for teaching? What are the best assessments to gauge whether progress is being made? How do we coach teachers? And we learned together with a team. So there was this core group of people that were natural leaders of our school from early on. And all of them continue to be at the school. And so all of us together have created what we want coaching to look like, what we want the schedule to look like, what we believe the strategies for ensuring we're looking at the right things when we look at data and teaching and reteaching strategies. And so I want to say there's something about like having these people be the same people that saw the school when it wasn't, performing well and have worked really, really hard to see the school make progress and continue to be motivated to see it through the next phase of what does it look like to expand what we think works for the number of kids we've been able to serve. What does it look to continue to have success while we expand to serve many, many more children? So that's what I think, that's what comes to mind. But I think, Christian, I invite you to answer the question based on your feelings about the school.
Sure. So I relocated last summer from Houston, Texas. Never heard of DC Bilingual before till I interviewed. And I think being here for the first year, it's kind of aligned with what Daniela said is the culture of the school. With individuals who've been there for so long, who've built relationships with families and with students and with each other. The culture is what drives the success of DC Bilingual. Being new, one of the few people from the outside coming into DCB, it had its challenges like any workplace, but I think I was embraced with warm hands and arms from staff. and families. And I'm kind of excited about continuing that. And with your question, Director Rodriguez, I actually am working my doctorate of education, and the site for my study is DC Bilingual. And I'm looking to understand why our families are so engaged and interested in staying enrolled in our school. So we will be able to answer your question a year from now.
It's a very deep, long, like 10,000 word answer to my question. It's going to be great.
Yes, sir. If I could, 1 second follow up with Director Wright's question. So I put up our C of O, and it lists 520 students and 80 staff. But then the occupant load, which is where the confusion came, is listed at 502. So technically we would fall within that 520 to 80. So that's 600 individuals in the building with 490 students last year, no more than 100 students on site, 100 staff on site at one time. You'll see in our numbers, we have roughly 140 to 150 staff, but 40 to 50 of those are part-time staff that support arrival, dismissal, lunch and recess, and our after-school program. But soon enough, in a couple of weeks, we'll have an updated C of O that'll accommodate our growth as well.
Okay, thank you, Christian. Appreciate that follow-up.
Christian, when you get that revised COO in, can you please send that to myself and my colleague Clarissa, who reached out to you?
Yes, we'll do.
Thank you.
Congratulations on the construction project. That is not a small thing. And I know when I visited a few months ago, it wasn't done. So it must have made quite a bit of progress. Look forward to seeing that at some point. All right, thank you, DC Bilingual team. If there are no more questions on our end, then we will move on. We'll look forward to revisiting with you in a few months.
Thank you all.
Thank you so much. We're having a ribbon cutting October 21st. So if you can all be there, that'll be awesome. You could even speak at the event if you'd like. Thank you.
Thank you. The next, Hannah doesn't need to stay up because the next item on the agenda, the school has actually removed from consideration for this meeting. So we will move on and invite Ms. Melody Sampson and the Paul Public Charter School team up to the virtual dais.
I'm pulling them up now.
Good evening. My name is Melody Sampson, and I'm a senior manager in the school performance department. Tonight, the board will hear from Paul Public Charter School regarding its request to amend its enrollment schedule and charter goals. The school is already authorized to enroll students in grades 5 through 12. However, it chooses to enroll students in grades 6 through 12. Paul Public Charter School plans to begin enrolling fifth graders in school year 23-24. To do so, the school must adjust the enrollment schedule in its charter agreement to include fifth graders while staying within its 875 student enrollment ceiling. Finally, Paul Public Charter School must adjust its charter goals. The school uses the PMF as its goals for grades 6 through 12. It proposes using the PMF as its charter goals for grade 5 as well. A representative from the school is available to answer the board's questions.
Welcome, Dr. Wright.
Good evening, everyone. How are you? Good. Thank you all for having me here this evening. This is 2 meetings in a row. What does that mean? I almost work for PCSB at this point. If I go to one more meeting, that means that I work for you all. Really, really happy to be here. Really blessed also to be here as it's Rick's last night. So I have an opportunity to tell you personally, thank you so much for your time and your service to the students of Washington, D.C. Congratulations, because congratulations are in order. You've really impacted the lives of so many students, and I wish you the best in whatever your next endeavors are. So thank you for all that you've done, Rick. With that, I am here this evening to request our opportunity to amend the enrollment schedule. We're not asking for an increase, just a redistribution so that we can actually serve the full spectrum of grades that's actually in our charter. For quite some time, Paul Public Charter Schools, as you know, it actually started as a middle school that served students in grades 7 and 8 only, and then grew to expand to serve students in grades 6, 7, and 8, and then expanded again to serve students in grades 6 through 9. And then the last expansion was to serve students in grades 6 through 12. In school 1920, we did some pretty deep data dives and analysis, and learned that the longer we had the opportunity to serve our students, the better and the greater the outcomes were with our children. And so in 1920, we actually started the process of having internal community meetings with stakeholders, our parents, our families, with, of course, the board's permission, to start the process of exploring actually serving the students in the grade levels that are listed in our charter. This has been a 3-year process to get to this point where we now want to embark upon planning to actually launch our first 5th grade class for school year 23-24. We're looking to serve 25 5th grade students. Our goal ultimately is to have 2 classes of 5th graders, kind of topping out at serving 50 students. And this puts us also in alignment with what is more common across charter schools in Washington, D.C., to actually serve students starting in elementary grade levels, expanding middle school down to start either at grade 4 or grade 5. Right now, we are kind of at a sync in terms of what's offered in the charter sector, as we still have the traditional model for our middle school students. So again, not looking to increase our enrollment ceiling, but definitely looking to redistribute the 875 that we're currently allowed to serve in our charter to include the addition of 5th grade students.
Thank you, Dr. Wright. Board members, does anyone have any questions to start?
Good evening, Dr. Wright. It's good to see you.
Good to see you also.
So just a quick question. You're talking 25 5th graders. Can you talk to us a little bit about your plans for recruiting 5th graders? Do you imagine that most of them will be your siblings, given the vast range? And then I just want to say on record, it's sad to see one of the last kind of middle school, traditional middle school, charter middle schools changing. You guys have been a warrior in that range for a long time. But how have you thought about the 5th graders, and do you imagine that most of them will be siblings of some sort?
Yeah, we do have a significant number of our students who would come into that first class as with the sibling preference. We've surveyed parents, had focus groups with our families, and there definitely is a market for us to serve students in that age group. I think additionally, what is now typically considered the normal transition point for middle schoolers, and I heard Daniela say this, I actually wrote it down. She said that there were a number of families who were making the decision to start middle school sooner. And so the transition marker to leave elementary and go to middle school, it is very different right now in Washington, D.C., because it can happen when your child is finishing up 3rd grade and they're going to go to maybe a KIPP middle school that starts in the 4th grade, or it can happen when they finish 4th grade and they start in the 5th grade. So it definitely expands just the general pool of students who are available to join the Paul family as a student in grade 5, but we do definitely have a demand amongst our current student population to start serving children at grade 5.
And good evening, Dr. Wright. Just to build on that, how will having the 5th grade on your school campus, how will it impact your existing middle and high school campus?
Yeah. So part of the research that we've done, it also included a facilities assessment so that we could actually think through like what this would look like, because now we're inviting students, some of who may be as young as 9 years old, right, to join our campus. The way that we're currently set up, we've done a great job of having a high school side of our school, if you've ever visited, which is very separate from our middle school side of the school. And on the middle school side, we also separate our sixth graders, and they are in kind of the Paul prep portion of our building. And so our fifth graders would join our sixth graders because they are like in terms of their needs. And that's where that would be the biggest impact. We're already kind of separate in terms of where our middle schoolers and high schoolers are, and our fifth graders, because there's only one class, will join where our current sixth graders currently reside.
Building off Shakura's question, how does it impact your staffing?
Yeah, so right now we're thinking about adding the two classes as self-contained classrooms. So it will follow more of a traditional elementary school model, and having a self-contained class where the teacher teaches all 4 core content areas, and then the students will go to their special subject classes of art, music, or physical education, computer science, and we also have drumming. They'll have some combination of those elective classes. And so the lift is not going to be huge initially, Leah, in terms of staffing, because we're choosing a self-contained model. When we do make the decision to grow to 50, we may revisit that decision, and that is really connected to what our sixth grade enrollment looks like. It's possible that some of our sixth grade teachers can do 5-6 splits, but as it stands right now, that's not how we're going to be set up.
And just a secondary question, I'm very curious, what does the preparation look like, or what would the preparation look like for a fifth grader to prepare to transition all around and engage in the current structure of your school?
Yeah, so that's a great question. The preparation for the students, a lot of that, you're talking about like, how do we make sure that the children cannot move through our large building? Is that what you're asking?
Yes, but more important, like sort of, you mentioned something like Paul Prep, and I haven't had the pleasure of visiting your school yet, but I'm just curious now with the addition of a fifth grade, what does prep look like to engage in Paul and to be successful?
Yeah, so Paul Prep actually starts in the summer. Where we do orientation for the students who are new to the building. They have about a week of orientation. There are a couple of different ceremonies. They do learn how to walk through our buildings. They're escorted. They learn how to walk in line as big middle schoolers. They also learn about what it means to like use hallway and bathroom passes, because our school is larger than I would think a traditional elementary school is. It's just far more spacious. So we do a lot of that training early on during orientation. It also, again, because they are kind of isolated, Paul Prep is isolated on the first floor where there are not many classrooms. There's more offices on that first floor on that side of the wing. So there's always more adult supervision to kind of help make sure that we're able to usher students through so no one gets lost or anything like that. And they're able to always readily reach out to adults if they need any help or support. The other piece that I'll add to that is there is a lot of intentionality around preparing our students to be big middle schoolers, right? And so a lot of that has to do with like organization, learning how to manage your agenda book, learning how to get into your lockers, learning how to transition into lunch where you have to go back into your lockers. So all of those kind of logistical and executive functioning things, there is heavy emphasis on training and developing students during orientation, but it's also filtered throughout the year in their daily crew lessons that they get at the top of each day.
Thank you.
Okay, Dr. Wright, this will come before us in September. So if there are no other questions, then we look forward to seeing you later.
Yep, I would thank you so much. I'm going to add just one quick piece. We've been looking at our enrollment, and as you all may know, the demographics of our school, they are rapidly changing. Last year was our first year where we actually served more students with unique learning needs than students who did not have unique learning needs. Said differently, most of the children who attended our school either were labeled as English learners or they were students who had IEPs. This year, when you look at the enrollment for our incoming 6th grade class, our target is 80 students. We currently have about 75 of the 80 fully enrolled. And of the 75 who are fully enrolled, 51 of our students are English learner students. And so it's really important for us to be able to work with our students earlier because we recognize that Paul is an anomaly in the city, that we're one of the few schools that serve such a large population of English learners. And, you know, that means that we probably have more resources allocated to serve this population. So the sooner that we can get children into our building to start to do that work, the better it always works out for our children. Okay, thank you. And I will see you for the second half of the agenda.
Thank you, Dr. Wright. Okay, board members. Now we move to our public meeting. Before we approve the agenda, I understand that Richard Wright Public Charter School has withdrawn its amendment request. Can I have a motion to remove that item from the agenda and approve the revised meeting agenda?
So moved.
Thank you, Rick. Okay, we'll do this by roll call vote. Rick Cruz?
Aye.
Jim Sandman?
Aye.
Ricardo Ganjam?
Aye.
Nick Rodriguez?
Aye.
Socorro Domafarian?
Aye.
Chantel Wright?
Aye.
I'm an aye as well. Right. We move to the public hearing. May I please invite Ms. Andres Rojas Suarez from the School Performance Department, as well as Dr. Wright. I probably should have told her she just should stay on.
Yeah, I'll wait until Dr. Wright joins us to begin. There she is. Good evening. I'm Andres Rojas Suarez, a specialist in the School Performance Department. Last month, the board heard from Paul Public Charter School regarding its request to offer a hybrid learning model in school year 2022-23. Under the hybrid learning model, all students and teachers will participate in in-person instruction Monday through Thursday and virtual instruction on Fridays, which will also be a half-day. The school believes this shift to a hybrid model will allow for greater individualized learning experiences for students and maximize time for staff professional development. Today, DC PCSB staff recommends that the board vote to approve Paul Public Charter School's request to offer a hybrid program. However, DC PCSB staff recommends that the board approve the request with modifications permitting the school to pilot the program during school year 2022-23 before granting permanent authorization. While Paul Public Charter School successfully met some of DC PCSB's approval standards, DC PCSB staff concluded there was limited evidence in the areas of evidence of program effectiveness and staff and family support. DC PCSB staff recommends the following standards be met for the board to approve permanent authorization at the end of school year 2022-23. The school's fall 2022 to spring 2023 NWEA MAP performance must be stronger than its fall 2021 to spring 2022 performance. Further, any additional data requested must demonstrate to DC PCSB's staff satisfaction, programmatic success. Additionally, the school must submit compelling supplemental evidence demonstrating that families support virtual Fridays. The school must administer a family satisfaction survey, and results must demonstrate that at least 51% of all families, not just of respondents, support virtual Fridays. If the survey results and additional data demonstrate to DCPCSB's staff satisfaction, staff and family support, then DCPCSB staff may recommend that its board permanently approve virtual Fridays. DCPCSB opened this proposal for public comment on June 13th, and the public comment window closed on June 27th. DCPCSB did not receive any public comments on this proposal.
Thank you, Andres. Dr. Wright, welcome back again. Would you like to offer any remarks before I invite board members to ask any follow-up questions?
No, I first of all, thank you for the recommendation from staff to approve. I would say that, we are looking forward definitely to bringing additional documentation and data back to the board so that we can hopefully receive permanent approval. But also keeping in mind that this is going to be the implementation of a new process, and sometimes to see the full fruits of what it is that we want to see manifest because of this shift. Sometimes it takes a little bit more time, but I think that we can work through that as we work through the year. And so outside of that, we're fine with the recommendations.
Okay, thank you. Board members, does anyone have follow-up questions or comments that they'd like to offer before we move to a vote?
I don't have any questions, but I appreciate the recommendations that staff has made, the qualifications here. And I thank you, Tracy, for making it easy by saying you accept them. I just want to emphasize that I think we're still feeling our way on virtual education. And I think we need more data and more information. This idea of a pilot year strikes me as wise. I think that what you learn during the pilot year is going to be very important to the decision that we make a year from now. This is not a perfunctory thing. And I think the importance of having parent buy-in to it. I mean, I think they're in a unique position to assess whether this is working for their students or not. So I'm completely comfortable with the recommendation subject to the conditions that the staff has proposed.
So I don't have any direct questions, and just so Dr. Wright and anyone watching, we as new board members, we did watch the prior June board public hearing. While we didn't have a chance to ask direct questions to the school staff, we did watch the meeting and engage with the staff. And my comments are not just directed at Paul, but to us as a board and staff as we contemplate implementing virtual learning of any kind on a larger basis. The bar must be high and the scrutiny has to be unapologetic. Needs and desires of students and families must be at the center. The data must support the request, and all our standards for approval must be met. In this case, we've set out 4 standards for schools to meet for virtual learning: mission and goal alignment, demonstrating student outcomes will meet or exceed, in-person inclusiveness, and demonstrated staff and family support. At this point, the LEA has met 2 of the 4, right? The mission and goals alignment and inclusiveness. The pause that the staff has around whether or not the virtual in this one day will actually make a difference is still a question for me. And based solely on the application, the mixed and map data presented does not show that demonstrate that the virtual program contemplated will yield increased student outcomes. We spent months pushing schools to reopen and understanding that schools are more than just buildings of learning, but for our children, particularly Black and Brown children and those coming from marginalized and historically underserved home, school offers more. It just does. It's community, safety, and consistent caring adults. And I believe we should only limit that access to virtual in the most critical and urgent times as absolutely necessary and with the highest bar of scrutiny. Second, when the school did not present data that demonstrated the family supported virtual Friday program, according to the application, the work began in April 2022, which was after, at least for virtual Fridays, which was way after my school DC, and families had the opportunity to truly understand and support the proposal. We basically just told these families that despite their selected choice for brick and mortar and in-person learning, they're now subject to a 4-day in-person school week and must plan accordingly for their child to be home 1 day a week. And while we definitely want to think innovatively and use this post-pandemic period to be flexible and creative in addressing not just learning loss, but to quote the LEA, to reflect the society-aligned and more flexible employment experience for staff, we cannot do so on the backs of children and families who now have to be responsible for learning, even if it is simply ensuring there's a sacred space for virtual learning within the home. I think something that many of us take for granted. 1 day a week for the entire school year, whether by choice or not. And so again, for me, this is not about Paul in particular. This is about thinking about the larger impact of moving to a potential 4-day school week as an organization. And I understand that the desire for Paul is to be more flexible and society-aligned experience. The unintended consequence of this plan is that it's created a less flexible and more burdensome experience for families who now have to figure out what to do with their child each Friday, worry about their safety if they're not at work. And I do know that there is the option for the child to come in if they need to, or at this late time of year, they have to choose another school that provides 5 full days of learning. That's not how we should make decisions or engage in our most important stakeholders, our families, even for a pilot. So I just want us to be mindful as we're thinking about virtual, as Jim said, how this looks over time, I think is probably one of the biggest issues in front of this board.
Can I respond to some of Chantel's concerns? Because it may not have been as prominent in the application, or maybe we didn't talk about it as deeply in that meeting, but I want to start by talking about the concerns of families, which we have overwhelming support from our families. We shared survey data, but we've had roundtables, we've had family meetings, and we are actually more fully enrolled at this point in the summer than we've been in the past 5 years. We've already we're at 97% fully enrolled. And so we've shared with our parents, they know fully what our hopes are in terms of virtual Fridays, and they have lock, stock, and barrel definitely signed on board. So I just want to make sure that may not have come across clearly in the application, but they are voting with their feet. Again, we are at 97% of our enrollment target, and we're in the middle of July. We've not seen that type of responsiveness in 5 years. So and all of our parents are fully aware. They also know that that the virtual Fridays is some sort of a hardship for them, that we will provide space for students. We've always had a half day. And so the real hardship for our parents has actually been trying to figure out, for many of them, how do we leave work in the middle of the day to accommodate our students? And so we've had a large percentage of our families who have actually applauded the opportunity to not have to figure that out anymore. So that's one thing. I just want to be super clear. We would not move forward with this proposal if we did not have overwhelming family support. And we have had overwhelming family support. The second piece is, as it relates to the data, there are 2 sets of data that we've shared. One is our MAP growth data. And actually, we cut that data 2 different ways. We cut that data from fall to fall. And the reason why we cut that data in one of those tables from fall to fall is because many of the interventions that we plan to implement on virtual Fridays, we implement for our students over the summer. And so what we see is that our children don't typically experience summer slide. They typically experience summer growth. And we're attributing a lot of the growth that we see when we look at our students' data fall to fall to the fact that we're using some of these more non-traditional methods to help support our students' growth and learning over the summertime. The other piece of data that's really that just kind of shared to add some additional color is we also have interim assessment data. And so Paul has worked very, very hard. For the last couple of years, we've worked very closely with EdOps to do a number of different deep analytical studies on our items and item analysis to make sure that we're correlating the items that are on our interim assessments, particularly for reading and for ELA and for math, with PARCC-based items. The data, particularly when our students were in the virtual space, it was as strong as, and in some cases stronger. And I think we shared our 11th and 12th grade data than the data that we saw when our students were back place-based. And so just to add that we did not see a tremendous slide in terms of our student performance over that period of time. We still have a tremendous amount of work to do, but it's actually some of the strategies that we implemented during school year 2021 that led to us making this request to do virtual Fridays, because we found such a significant and profound percentage of our students who benefited from being able to learn in that blended space. So I just wanted to make sure that those 2 points were super clear: overwhelming parental support, or else we wouldn't do it, because we wouldn't have kids. and that was one of the things that we had to slow walk. If our parents did not want it, we wouldn't do it. And the second piece is we definitely saw, especially when you look at our interim assessment data, that our students were indeed able to keep up pace in the virtual environment. Okay.
Nick.
Great. Dr. Wright, good to see you again. I just wanted to say, I'm supportive of this proposal as well. And like the other new board members, also read the materials and viewed the prior public hearing as well. And sort of on that basis, I share Chantel's hesitations and concerns, all the reasons we think about the importance of in-person learning. I think for me, what mitigates that for us is that we do, as Jim says, need to find kind of a way forward on this, and we need to kind of figure it out together. Appreciate that actually the proposal is incremental in the sense of sort of saying like we're looking at like, 1 day a week, and it's hybrid, and there's an option for kids to be on site, which I think is important. I think too, just the fact that it is a pilot year and that we are kind of putting conditions on it, I think that's the responsible thing to do. I think the only thing I'd add to what Jim said is that not only will it be important what you learn from that pilot, I actually think a lot of us will probably be watching you to see what you learn, because it will have implications for the rest of the charter school community and for what exactly the ways forward are, and whatever we can do to kind of do that without it, not in the sense of extra scrutiny so much as of just extra learning. I think that could be beneficial for this board and for the way that we think about sort of future requests like this that are going to come.
Thank you, Nick. Shakara.
Yep, Dr. Wright, thank you again. And I appreciate the additional context that you provided in speaking to board member Wright's concerns. I want to, without having to repeat, I share the same concern that board member Wright mentioned. Just again, thinking through the experiences for students, thinking through all that has come of COVID and just the new world and all that we're learning. I just continue to share those concerns. And so where I am now, I just continue to have those concerns. I just wanted to name that for you.
Yeah, and I want you all to know that these are concerns that we are thinking about all of the time. We actually started a work group back in October because we had to become more perfect in terms of instructional delivery in a hybrid space, right? We had several students who had COVID exemptions. If they didn't have a COVID exemption for the full year, as you all know, there were bouts and there were periods of time where children had to be isolated from school. The position that we took when we first went into quarantine back in March of 2020 was that we were not going to address our students learning asynchronously, that asynchronous instruction or learning was not going to be our primary tool that we were going to use to work with our students. And we didn't, and we have not. There will be some afternoon asynchronous work, but we do synchronous virtual instruction with our children because we do, in fact, believe that our students have got to be engaged with their instructors, that giving them just online assignments is not sufficient to address their learning needs. And so we never did that from the very outset of quarantine. And because we never did that, we continued with that model of hybrid instruction. And when we say hybrid, what we mean is that we had all year long some students that were in the school with us, of course, and then we had students who were quarantining because they were either a close contact or quarantining because they actually had COVID. And so what we knew we could not afford to do this year was if a child had to be out for 10 days, they couldn't get 10 days of assignments. So what our children did is they logged in. And every single classroom in our building has an approximately 60-inch screen in the classroom. And when students log in, the teacher can then see the children on that large screen. And then the children can see, of course, the teacher and the students in the classroom. And we invested in technology that's called Swivel, so that it was just like a full AV production of instruction in each of our classrooms. And so because we had to do that all year, because we had students who were in and out all year, we really did spend a tremendous amount of time this year figuring out what some of the best practices and best platforms are to deliver instruction virtually to our students. And so just know that the same concerns that Board Member Wright raised, that everyone is raising, we share those concerns. And we have actively, planned around and made sure that we're addressing those concerns so that we're making sure we're optimally meeting the needs of our students.
One question that I do have, and I know I wasn't present, of course, I wasn't installed then at the board meeting. One question I do have, for those families who opt into bringing children into the building for whatever reason, is it that you're working with families to kind of troubleshoot whatever is keeping the students from being able to participate at home? Or is it just a general exception that, okay, they can't do this virtual Fridays from home, they just come to school and that's it? How is that going to work?
Right. So most of our families who have said that they would prefer for their students to come into the school, it was less about it being virtual instruction and more about it being unreliable internet. And as of right now, out of roughly 730 students, we may have about 20 families who are choosing the brick and mortar option on Fridays. By and large, most of our families, again, prefer to do the virtual Fridays. It does relieve, some piece of a burden from having to figure out arrangements for students on a half day. And again, a good number of our families, particularly our families of students who had special needs, saw children have good successes in that space at home. For those families who have internet issues, just like we did when we went into quarantine in 2020, we are actively working actually right now with them to address whether it's bandwidth issues, whether it's connectivity issues, or in some cases, it's just that some people need to get, basic service reestablished in their homes. Our whole ops and technology team is supporting families to be able to do that in the interim.
And then as you look at the data throughout the year, what does do you anticipate, or is it, are you all interested rather in having students, if you notice that a student just is not performing well, they're going to be required to flex in?
That's an absolute yes. That is an absolute yes. We have made that known. In our conversations with parents, if we see that a child is not performing or they're not getting their afternoon assignments done, because that piece is new for students, right? When we have days, children, of course, have homework, but this is different. Like, they have to stay connected in a different way now. And so if we see that students are struggling with that, then we will have them flex in.
So go, Shakur.
Please.
So I'm glad that Shakur asked that question about the ones who have an issue. So talk just a little bit more about what you're doing to support the families that you said specifically have the internet issue.
Mm-hmm.
What are you all providing hotspots? Because obviously this has been going on for almost 2 years now. So what does that work look like to help close the divide, understanding it's not technically the job of a school to close a digital divide, but in this reality, we've become responsible for that. And in order for it to be inclusive. So that's one. And then the second, follow up a little bit for me, who is actually on campus to work with the scholars that do come in on Friday? And are they they're still virtual? They're just with an adult who is caring for them. Is that correct? Okay. So can you talk a little bit more about the divide and what you think you need as a school in order to carry that out to support those families?
Yeah, I will tell you that having to switch into virtual instruction, and again, because we made the switch and we made the switch synchronously, there was never an asynchronous moment for our PAWS students. We are pretty darn good at bridging that digital divide. So we do have, quite the collection of hotspots to support families who have any type of internet issues. We also, of course, our kids have been one-to-one since 2020. We have a pretty good surplus of computers so that we can change out devices, and we have done a lot of home delivery service for our devices as well, just in case like there needs to be a fast change out of a device. We've gone so far as to deliver the computers if we needed to do that. So we have a good surplus of computers. We have a very strong technology team, and some of the support has been if our families have had some issues in terms of setting up payment plans because they're past bills that are preventing them from having Wi-Fi access, just helping them to kind of navigate making those types of arrangements so that they can get back to a place of connectivity. And again, always in the meantime, we have hotspots that the school covers the cost for. And then if none of those options work, then again, the children can come to the school where we do have a schedule of staff that will be on site to work with our students, which includes making sure that they get breakfast and lunch. The same thing holds true for our students who would be at home. We will send 2 meals home with them every single Thursday. We did that similarly because we were a feeding site during the entire time that we were quarantined. And so we'll make sure that our children are completely and totally taken care of, from their food to their internet to their computers, and then of course to the content that they need to be learning on that day.
One other question. Oh, sorry. I've been talking.
Go ahead.
One other question around sort of the data on student achievement. In the review of data that you all had, were there any students or groups of students that you saw who perhaps didn't perform as well when it was all virtual, but when they came the following year and it was all in person, did better? And is there, and I may have missed this I'm still trying to catch up in the application, but will there be any consideration with regard to students who might just perform better in person, smaller group, and flexing a bit of the virtual Friday model to offer that to them?
So that's how we are kind of out the gate, right? So if we look at the data, and we do have that time to look at the data every single week, if we see that there are some students who are consistently struggling in that virtual place, and let's say they were doing well when they were on site, then we will flex those children back into the building. And so we've shared that openly with our parents and our families that, we're going to look at that data. And if we need to pull them in to wrap our arms around them more tightly, then we absolutely will do that. We did, in fact, see different groups of students that absolutely soared in that virtual place. And then there were those students who absolutely struggled in that virtual space. Some of that struggle was about methods for instructional delivery, right? And that was some of the data and feedback that we got, not just from our students, but from our families also, because for almost a whole year plus, our children were going to school in front of their parents. And so, the methodology for instructional delivery wasn't always a match for our students. So we've spent the last year really doing some work around that. You can't PowerPoint people to death. You have to do a lot more around, the use of breakout rooms, the use of different types of platforms and different types of modalities that you can use virtually to help enhance the learning experience. And what I will say, and I'll cut myself short after that, is that we have to do this because this could be the way of the world again, right? Like, heaven forbid we have another pandemic. But if we did, or you had an outbreak in your school that was substantial enough where that you had to move into that quarantine virtual space, we need to be able to deliver instruction well and effectively in that space as well. So I know that was a long answer, but the short answer was yes.
Okay, and just to follow up on something, so when you say bringing students back in to wrap their arms around them, are you saying putting them in a room where they're still accessing the virtual learning, or you're changing the delivery completely? It's back to in-person small groups.
No, they would still be able to access the virtual learning, but there's a staff member who's there with them that can provide more facilitative help and support if they needed it.
Okay, so it's just changing the place, but the delivery system is all the same.
That's right. That's right. The delivery system and the support, the educator support that's there in the building.
I'll have some remarks in a moment, but I want to first offer to Rick.
Thanks. Thanks for a great discussion. I'm supportive with the qualifications that were suggested by the staff, but I'll just say this is exactly the conversation we need to be having, and I'm so appreciative to see the board having this active of a conversation about this. You know, it at the center sits this of so much of our work sits this tension between trying to safeguard the experience of families and particularly students and their experience, and looking for innovation, creativity, and different approaches to serve students, because we know a lot of what the collective public education system has done for decades hasn't always worked for students. So I think that this is exactly the conversation we need to be having. And while I'm supportive, I also am incredibly respectful of all of the concerns, and I share many of them. And I think it'll be important for this board to come back to this conversation, and specifically to what Paul is attempting.
Dr. Go ahead, Ricardo.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo on about that. Just as excited as I am about digital learning and distance learning, and I'm really glad that we're taking a pilot approach to this so that we can really glean some important lessons learned on maybe the subjects where this works best, the types of students that this works best for, the age range of students that this works for, and really make those adjustments along the way. So appreciate the innovation and the opportunity to continually adjust.
And Dr. Ed, I'll wrap it up with first a note of appreciation for all of our board members, especially our newest board members, who have really put a lot of thought into this. And this is, I am confident, what we have much to look forward to. With this is not just about Paul. This is about learning. This is about the changing circumstances that have happened and could happen again around us in the city. And as we think about population growth and need and change, and we've collectively been thinking about how to best serve our middle and high school students since before the pandemic started. We knew we need to be thinking differently about this. And so it's with that, I will support the staff's recommendation for modifications to the proposed amendment. And last month, when your team initially presented, I had asked a question around the day of the week. And I still am less enthused about Fridays being the days for things like this, because it could come across as a day off. I appreciated the thoughtfulness with how and I reread the application, reflecting on your responses to that. I appreciate the thoughtfulness with which you and the team are approaching this, the rationale. I share some questions that you and your team and our team have had around. It appears that some students did better after this in some subject areas, and some didn't do as well. We need to unpack that. So what Nick mentioned earlier about, we all have a lot to learn here. And the point you just made is there could be situations we find ourselves back in. I hope not. But the ability to operationalize and be flexible to meet different realities around us, I think are incredibly important. So it's with that that I'll support approaching this with the modifications and appreciate very, very much all of this back and forth. With that in mind, board members, can I have a motion?
Chair Cruzy, before we go to motion, can I make sure that on the record, it is clear what the conditions to the pilot are and what exactly will be voted on? Paul's sake, but our sake as well. For me, as I said, this is not just about Paul, this is about precedent that will be set for this sector. So can we be clear for everyone around what those conditions are? Melody, I don't know, or
that's a good idea.
Andres,
so,
yes,
Melody, if you're
actually,
yes, Andres.
Andres, sorry about that.
Yes, it's Andres. Could you restate for us?
So I will just lay it out and then I'll have Andres specify the criteria that we will look at the end of this next 22-23 school year. So what you are voting on approval tonight is just authorizing the LEA to offer virtual Fridays during the 22-23 school year. That is the vote. And then Andres, if you could share again the criteria that we will be looking at the end of this next school year, if the board does approve the 1 year virtual Fridays.
Yep, so the criteria is the school's fall 2022 to spring 2023 NWEA mapped performance must be stronger than its fall 2021 to spring 2022 performance. And then any additional data requested must demonstrate to DC PCSB's staff satisfaction, programmatic success. And then additionally, the school must submit compelling supplemental evidence demonstrating that families support virtual Fridays. The school must administer a family satisfaction survey, and results must demonstrate that at least 51% of all families, not just of the respondents, support virtual Fridays. And if the survey results and additional data demonstrate to DC PCSB's staff satisfaction, staff and family support, then DC PCSB staff may recommend that its board permanently approve virtual Fridays moving forward.
Thank you for that. Can I now have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
I think we might need a little bit more specificity on what the motion is.
Mm-hmm.
I could jump in. I move to approve the charter amendment request of Paul Public Charter School with the conditions as proposed by staff.
Second.
Thank you. Motion and second, then I will take a roll call vote. Rick Cruz.
Aye.
Jim Sandman.
Aye.
Nick Rodriguez.
Aye.
Shakora Domasanian.
Nay.
Chantel Wright.
Nay.
Ricardo Ganjam.
Aye.
And Leah Cruz is aye. That's 5 ayes and 2 nays, so the ayes have it. Thank you very much, Dr. Wright. Congratulations. We look forward to learning more over the course of the next year.
Thank you all. Thank you so much. And I just want to ask Rick to make that the last motion he makes so that it can go on record that his last motion was for Paul. Thank you.
Love it. Love it.
Have a good evening, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Wright.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Andres. And we'll welcome up Kirsten James in the School Performance Department.
Good evening. My name is Kirsten James, and I am a director in the School Performance Department. DC PCSB staff recommends its board vote to approve the proposed data collection summary for the revised accountability framework as an inventory of the data that will be collected to model potential approaches to the revised framework. This document represents one step in DCPCSB's plan to revise the Performance Management Framework, or PMF, as part of our strategic roadmap priority of excellent schools. DCPCSB received 2 public comments. Since holding the public hearing on June 27th, 2022, in response to public comments, minor updates were made to the data collection summary, updating information about approved certifications for adult education schools, and clarifying the early childhood growth measure in the school progress category includes pre-kindergarten assessments. In school year 22-23, data analysis and business rule modeling will inform discussions with stakeholders to make decisions on floors, targets, and weights for the revised framework. A new technical guide anticipated to be released in spring 2023 will detail the revised accountability framework, including the final list of measures.
Thank you for this, Kirsten. I thought that in part because we have 3 new board members and we'll be making a vote, and in part because after 3+ years engaging on this, I realized that there is some translation that needs to happen from our English into general public English. So I want to make sure we're clear on when we talk about our revised accountability framework, that we're not tonight, what we are voting on tonight, what we are not voting on, kind of in the most kind of non-technical language, what we are going to be learning over the course of this year, and with a specific definition on what a technical guide is.
Okay, so what we are voting on this evening is simply a list of measures that we are considering including in the final framework. So we have expanded that list from what was the PMF, but mostly includes many things that were already there, and the details about how the calculations will be done, including the student universe, any details about how the calculations will be completed, what weights each category will have, what weights each measure or metric will have. All of those details will come in the technical guide, which will have, like you said, a lot of technical information, including, again, a basic list of the final measures we will include. So right now, these are the measures that we've decided we will be using to model different approaches. Modeling what does, for example, ISA or in-seat attendance look like as compared to chronic absenteeism. Modeling what it looks like for different student group weights when we look at growth measures, those kinds of things. So it's just a list of the actual data that we'll be collecting to have a vendor provide our data modeling for what these things will look like. And so when we have our when we continue to have our task force meetings throughout school year 22-23, we'll have some actual imagery, if you will, to present to the groups to say, this is what we want it to look like, or this is what we want it to look like.
Thank you. Okay, so we have a lot more to learn over the course of this year. As I think we recounted in the last board meeting, over the course of this school year, we'll be able to have ongoing working sessions with school leaders and other stakeholders by framework. And so the kind of big decisions before this board are going to come sometime next spring, is it?
Yes, we will likely use the school performance committee meetings for interim conversations with the board. But ultimately, the final list of measures and the technical guide will be up for, will be brought before the board in May of next year. And then similar to this year, we will have It'll be open for public comment. We will have a public meeting, and then we'll have a vote in July of 2023.
Great.
Leah,
Okay,
can I
thank
make a comment on this?
Sure.
Okay. So first, I just want to say to the board, thank you for the breadth and depth that you've thought about in terms of the areas that we're looking at for measurement. I think you said it correctly, Kristen, and Board Chair Cruzy, you spoke to it, where the real rubber's going to hit the road is when we start talking about calculations and weights and things like that. I want to just acknowledge the amount of engagement that the charter board staff has done to try to make sure that as many stakeholder voices could be heard as possible, particular school leaders. And want to just say to the school leaders who may be on this or people who may see this, recognizing that there's lots on our plate. This is probably also, I feel like I'm saying everything is the biggest issue in front of us, but this is probably the second or first, the biggest issue in front of us in terms of this revised accountability framework. And as the board is making itself available for comment and pushing and pulling around what calculations and weights and implementation look like, it is going to be critical that school leaders have their voice heard and that they are participating in this. And I would say at the same time, I would ask the staff to be mindful of how we balance those task force meetings, knowing also the demands, right, that have been on school leaders to recover from the pandemic. But for those who have not, if you really look at the breadth and depth that the staff has gone into trying to make sure that it is as inclusive as possible, real kudos to you all, and look forward to hearing from engagement from school leaders and other stakeholders around what we all know will be the critical part in terms of the weights and the implementations and the calculations, but just the staff itself, huge kudos for that. Thank you.
I think the kudos chain should continue. Thank you for that, Chantel, because this work started pre-pandemic, and what Dr. Walker Davis and her team have done to not only begin a very exhaustive effort and do so in a very thorough way, but also, especially since Dr. Walker Davis came on, to do so in a way that is aligned with our strategic plan, while building a strategic plan so that our language is aligned with our mission and our vision, and that we're very, very clear on our strategic priorities, excellent schools being first and foremost among those, and our values along with this, that it has been, I'm proud to have played this teeny role to sit alongside and observe how the staff has approached such a huge effort in what appears to be a coherent, but then also a very steady and organized manner. So thank you, Chantal, for repeating that. What is coming up over this next year is with school leaders that are always juggling so many things. This is a really important opportunity to show up to sessions, and when things sound very technical, if there's questions, ask them. And it's not just school leaders, of course, other school LEA boards, you're going to be signing off on things. You need to be understanding this too. So take advantage of opportunities when we have meetings on this, and please don't hesitate to ask questions. And this may be a reason for us to add items to our agenda so that we can update ourselves more regularly on this through the course of next year. There should be no surprises, and this should all make sense. Thank you. With that in mind, I don't know if Rick, you're going to make any motions here, but I will take a motion from anybody.
Can I say one more thing before we vote? Is that all right?
Please.
I'm also supportive, and Kirsten and the entire team, like, really just grateful to all of you for all the work you've done. I mean, I'm just seeing it for the first time, but it obviously represents a ton of work. One thing I asked staff about after reading it and being a new board member was the one thing that was on my mind was this question of, like, what do you do about the idea of innovative measures? And in particular, I mean, it's funny, the discussion we just had about virtual and about other things like that, like what are the provisions for, right? Both kind of having measures like that while still maintaining and staying the course and accountability. I think about virtual stuff. I think about sort of measures of equity that we haven't even thought of yet. And I think about measures of social emotional learning. The challenge there is that, number one, many of those measures don't exist or they don't have reliable sources yet. You wouldn't want to make them high stakes tomorrow, right? So the thing I think I'm interested in the dialogue of the next year and plus is, what are the right avenues to create that would kind of encourage schools to innovate and to kind of, for the benefit of the broader field and the broader community, while doing that in right relationship with the PMF. And the staff reminded me too that the PMF, obviously this is a gigantic kind of adjustment, but there are also incremental adjustments that get made as we learn new things, and that's important to consider. So I just want to log that as something that I think will be good for us to talk about in the discussions to come.
Thank you so much for that, Nick. One thing that I will say is that while the list that we have presented in the data collection summary is for right now, what we want to have on the table to discuss right now, the PMF, in my understanding of its historical context, has had iterations. And so as things change, as times change, we don't want to necessarily find ourselves in another instance where we have multiple years of no accountability because we are so heavily reliant on things like state assessments that we didn't have available. And so and we were just in a conversation the other day about how do we ensure that the framework we are building or rebuilding is reflective of our values as the public charter school board, and how we can ensure that schools are being recognized for their innovation as well. And so that what we're capturing isn't duplicative of other types of accountability that we have in the state.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Dare I request a motion? Invite?
I'm happy to.
No,
Rick, you can't do it.
Okay, I think I've learned my lesson. Well,
Gary,
I move to approve the data collection summary for the revised accountability framework.
Second.
You're a quick learner.
All right, thank you. Nick Rodriguez.
Aye.
Ricardo Ganjum.
Aye.
Jim Sandman.
Aye.
Chantel Wright.
Aye.
Rick Cruz.
Aye.
Sakura Domasanian.
Aye.
And Leah Cruzy is aye. The ayes have it. Thank you, Kirsten. Onward.
Congratulations, Kirsten.
Thank you. Have a great evening.
You too.
Okay, we move on to the consent calendar. Would any board member like to remove an item from the calendar for further discussion or to state a recusal for the record?
I'd like to state my recusal, the vote for Digital Pioneers Academy PCS as it involves Achievement Prep PCS.
I would like to state for the record that I would like to recuse myself from the Digital Pioneers Academy PCS item as it involves Achievement Prep PCS.
Okay, noted. Thank you. I will take a motion.
I move to approve the consent calendar.
Second.
Thank you. Rick Cruz.
Aye.
Jim Sandman.
Aye.
Chantel Wright.
I thought I would have to recuse myself because of Achievement Prep.
You're Right, you're recused from that particular item. You're able to still vote on the consent calendar. And you've already noted your recusal for the record on that particular item, but the consent calendar involves a bunch of other stuff too.
Thank you. Aye.
Shakora Adomafanian,
Aye.
Ricardo Ganjam,
Aye.
and Leah Cruzy. Aye. The ayes have.
Oh, I
Nick
don't think you
Rodriguez.
called me. Aye. Yeah.
Sorry, did not forget about you. All right, the ayes have it. Is there any new business? Okay. We'll take a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn the July 18th, 2022 board meeting.
Second.
Ricardo Ganjam,
Aye.
Jim Sandman,
Aye.
Chantel Wright,
Aye.
Shakora Adomafanian,
Aye.
Nick Rodriguez,
Aye.
Leah is an aye, and Rick Cruz.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Welcome.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Tim,
Thank you, Rick. Take
Aye.
care.
Thank you
Aye.
all.